All right, all right, all right. Let's turn off the ducks. Let's get rid of the banner. Welcome back. Welcome in, everybody. Say hello. Dad Kana in the house.
What's going on?
How are you? Welcome this morning, sir. It is bright and early for you, I believe.
Yeah.
Where are you coming in the day from?
Northern California.
Northern.
So
All right, North Cal,
yeah,
North Cal. Okay,
yeah.
okay. So we're here to talk about homebrews. We're here to talk about off meta, and some spice to itself, right? What can we do even with the meta game? I think. Shout out to our friends this morning. They're having fun. Hello, hello, Braden. Hello, hello, Clayton. There was a couple of these that I got to go back and re-highlight because I'm just like what is Ready Ralph? What is that? Do you have any idea what Ready Ralph
I
means?
think it's really funny that this card gets brought up because I was talking on Instagram earlier today about a Wreck-It Ralph, and they mentioned I think the Ready Ralph is the Ralph where when you ready him, if he has damage on him, you gain lore for how much damage is on him. It's a set
Oh,
five Ruby Ralph.
okay,
I was
okay,
just talking about this card.
okay. I was like, I read that one earlier. I'm like, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what they mean.
I was definitely confused. I was like, wait a minute, I don't know this one. Like most of them, I was like, yeah, I got that. I'm cool. I understand that one. I'm like, I have no idea.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, it kind of made me laugh. But so, the premise of this conversation, right, is that you reached out and you're like, hey, like I don't know what we can talk about, but you're like, I like cool homebrews and stuff like that. I'm like, that's perfect. Let's talk about cool homebrews. I do want to give a shout out real quick because not everyone reads everything and pays attention, but I gotta go full highlight mode here. This is the great value Dick Burns. So I hope you guys are helpful and like understand how awesome that DeadCon is going to be today. And yeah, I thought it was hilarious.
Look, I could possibly be Dick Burns if he was good for the brand. I might be good for the brand Dick Burns.
Good for the brand, Dick Burns. I mean, we joke, we kid, but Dick Burns is very good for the
He's the
brand.
best. He's the
We
best.
we we, we love ourselves a good amount of Dick Burns. Uh, Dick Burns is great value, Dad Cata. There you go. There
Thank
you
you.
go. True fun. True fun. So I did mess up a little bit here. I didn't even upload our starter decks here, but
Nope.
we have some cool stuff going on. We have some of your decks. We got some of the decks in the community that's been successful recently that I consider to be off meta. And then I did my best. I added some homebrews of my own in there for you, so we can kind of talk about all of them. I'm excited. I think the first one, the majority of people are the most excited, and I put it at the end of the meta report yesterday. But it was one of those like I just wanted people to like be excited that it did exist, and it was almost a top eight. We're talking it's so close, so close. So let's start with this wonderful snake chip stack, top 16, finished in ninth. Legitimately, it was like 0.3% where he missed the top eight on Saturday or on Sunday. So I felt for him. I really did.
Yeah, big time.
But I mean, people love Mushu, man, right? Like there's some people excited about Mushu. There's a couple other pretty cool cards in this list that we don't see too often. The Jasmine, for as an example, I
Yeah.
think it's really funny when we start talking about some of these off meta things. How often is that the off meta decks are built upon some of the best cards in limited? You know,
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, this card is such a like amazingly awesome card, but then like
Hmm.
you put it into a constructed atmosphere and you're like, all right. The Jasmine to me is one of those cards that's so good in limited.
Yeah,
Really,
absolutely.
really powerful. And then obviously Mushu, I mean, it might be the best card in set 7 in limited. I don't know how you lose when you like put that card in play.
Yeah. I
But
like
what about
so much
you?
hype around it.
For Ruby
Uh
Steel, have you were you a crafter of Ruby Steel when we saw Mushu and we kind of got into it? How you feeling about Ruby Steel right now?
yeah, I mean honestly, after I think it was the Southside Games tournament that happened right before the set drop. I think it was Southside Games, but there was somebody who brought Ruby Steel,
Yeah, the
and it
combo
was
deck.
yeah, the combo deck with Maui Shark.
Yeah.
Uh I had played a set champs where somebody had looped going the distance on me with Maui Shark, and I'm an Amber enjoyer. I got
Sure.
my board rocked. by that combo. So seeing
Yeah,
that already had made me excited because I started laughing when the guy was doing the combo. I mean, this is hilarious.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but then yeah, I mean, the second I saw Mushu, I was so excited. I'm still actually a little distraught that Mushu didn't get an enchanted, but um, I love this list. This is awesome. It's kind of cool seeing some like old school come back too, like the 2-drop Prince Eric Challenger 3. Like
Hmm.
I haven't seen any deck running this in a long time, but that Jasmine actually became pretty popular in my local meta for
Okay.
Ruby Amethyst players. Semi
Hmm. Okay.
right before set 7. So
Sure.
it definitely has its place. It's kind of cool to see them mix it in here for sure.
Yeah, I think that the most interesting note here is that I remember when I started building Ruby Steel decks, as like we kind of got the whole set out. I think my Ruby Steel deck was like $450 or like 500. It was like some outrageous number because it needed like every good legendary
Yeah.
in the combination. This deck comes in at like $120,
Oh
so
wow.
that's nice,
Yep.
for players that probably just bought their Mushus and know what to do with them. Like if you
Yeah.
have the Mushus and you have the Calhouns and Docs just like already, the rest of this deck is like, it's pennies. Very
Yeah.
very cheap deck to kind of pick up and afford. So it was nice to see that Snake Chips here was able to kind of pick up that victory and like really, I mean like 0.3%, guys. It's so close. It's so close. But it was nice to see it. Like I was really grateful that he shared it. Actually, like when I saw it, I was like, oh, sweet. Like I want to talk about this list.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's cool. I think this is like one of those choices where, and I guess like before we go too off, right? What what are some of the difficulties, right? Like when you're trying to build this off meta stuff, especially right now. It feels like right now we're in like such a like Sapphire oriented
Yeah.
meta game that like their decks are always doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? Like they're
Yeah.
just so very consistent. And normally, from my perspective, like off meta stuff, the reason it's off meta is because it is inconsistent. You can't like
Mhm.
always formulate that plan. So like as you're kind of like going and approaching these tournaments like in the area and stuff like that, like how are you approaching them if the plan and the intent is off meta?
You know, most of the stuff that I've played I started playing the game on big box release of set 1. So I've
Okay.
been playing it almost since the very beginning. And like the way that I've always approached it has been annoying cards. It's like
Sure.
that's always the way that I look at something when I'm trying to choose what I'm going to bring is like, what are big bodies that you can present in a deck that actually give you value and don't feel like you're wasting 5 or 6 ink. And
Right.
um, you know, that's one of the things. Like I was using Chinpo the moment Chinpo became available because I
Okay.
noticed every single time I slapped Chinpo down on the board, people would go, "The heck is that?" Flip the card around, read it, and then say, "God, that sucks." And I'd be like, "Yes, it does suck." And I have 4 of them in here.
Like, yeah,
So
he's a big dude.
yeah, exactly. I always every single time I play him, somebody says something like, "He's a big boy." But there's a lot of cards that like you mentioned, and get a lot of attention limited, and then um, we stop paying attention to them because we look at what's the top placing deck in the past few tournaments. And
Right.
there's a lot of cards that have good value. I mean, like there was Ruby Amber for a long time was using that 5/5 card soldiers. Like
Yep.
it's still a 5/5 that costs 5. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of value in cards like that, and you can find multiple ways to put them to your advantage. So I think it's good to
Yeah.
kind of like break out that mold and consider those options.
It's funny because I often say this, like some of the best secrets in Lorcana are in top 16. Like some of those
Hmm.
decks that they just miss, and it's played by a player that's just like it's very like they are very invested in the success of that deck.
Yeah,
But what we often learn is that like one player, it's so hard for one person to really break
for
like a meta.
sure.
Like it's so
Yeah,
difficult. So like a lot of the times is that what mostly happens is that yes, we see these top 8 decks come out and then players start playing them and then players start, working on them and like creating these even better versions of them.
yeah,
The same can be said for these top 16 decks that don't just make it, that just need honestly a little bit more input from some other player, from some other person that has like that like-minded goals.
yep,
And I think that's actually one of the cool things. Shout out to Lore 20 Pro is like on that Discord, like you can go in and there's just like everything imaginable is on there, so you
yeah.
can actually find people that are kind of working towards that goal as well for any deck. If I'm being honest in the game, so it's nice to say like once they come out, once people see it, like how do we build on that? And I think that that's always the problem when we don't have the information. So
For sure.
often not, you see 100-person tournament, 200-person tournament, and we don't know what's ninth place, we don't know what's 10th place. It
Yeah.
doesn't really get presented to us. So it's always nice when we see kind of like those ruby steel decks come up and kind of just like, or just any deck, like anything that
For
pops
sure.
out and you're like, oh man, that guy just missed there. But hey, like we're talking about less than 1% on tiebreakers. Where like this
Yeah.
deck was very much a top 8 deck. So it's like we can definitely have that conversation of like, why was it successful? How can it be more successful? So I think it's really cool when we talk about those things. But let's move on, right? We're going to talk about some of one of your decks. Now, I think it's interesting, right? Because it's hard to argue that this deck is not off meta. Because
Yeah. Yeah.
we have definitely seen some success with it so far. We understand that it is it exists. We have seen it on display. It's
Hmm.
been on live stream. Like so
Yeah.
like. But what about this deck? Do you really enjoy? Because this is your current list for this deck right now.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. Like when I saw the original lady reveal, I was like, if this card was not a dual link and this was only Amber, it would be in every single Amber deck I ever play. It's just, she's
Sure.
incredible. Just the stat value, everything is incredible. So I already knew immediately when I saw Lady, I was like, oh, you're going in a deck. I had built my first version of this. I'm a very avid Mufasa player, so most of my success comes from playing Steel Fossa decks. So I already knew I wanted to play a Mufasa deck that was different from Steel Fossa, just because that's been my main grind for the past 3 or 4 sets.
Sure.
Um, so Lady was something where I was like, well, I'm going to abuse that mechanic greatly. And I had made my first version of the list, and then I think Earl Meister had released his version that he had played. I think he was like 15-0 or something on it at the time,
Sure.
and I was like 3 or 4 cards off, and I was like, all right, we're on the right track. So I ended up slapping in Crickeys,
Mhm.
and I think I switched to Clarabelle. I didn't have Clarabelle line in there. But the deck has so much tempo and so much chance to just bounce back. It's incredible. It's like I feel like a lot of times I'll dump my whole hand intentionally to drop the sheer con, and then I'm just looking for Lady because I've already laid out several daisies or something else on earlier in the matchup.
Yeah.
And more times than not, it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like I'm gassing out. I feel like there's no chance I'm going to come back. Boom, slap Lady down, slap 2 daisies down, and all of a sudden I'm back in it. Like
Right.
I love the chance to get B prepped or big C suit or something like that and not feel like it's a complete wash. Which is why I think the deck is so much fun. It's such a fun deck.
Yeah, it's always one of those where it's always about the recovery.
Hmm.
We've seen decks like this in the past come out, but like the falter is that a beat prep and we're done. Like we can't move the
Yeah.
game forward. Ironically, it always reminded me of like the real bad times of Bucky discard, where like
Yeah.
Bucky discard was awesome. Like it was just awful to play against, but
Yeah.
like all it took was one beat prep, and it was like, man, how does this deck really recover?
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
very true for aggro decks, like, and the same
Yep.
thing, that's the other part of aggro decks is that one of the other difficulties is discard. If they're
Yeah.
able to keep you off, the waves of recover, it's difficult. But now that you have some more of those, like we're talking about this list in general, but you have Rapunzel, we have Lady, like we have what I think the best card in this list, though, in all honesty, is Tramp.
Yeah.
I think that that's what people kind of realize later on is that like, yeah, Lady's cool. It helps me like continue the game, but Tramp is the engine,
Yeah.
like
Sure.
finding our best cards in our specific matchups is like what really turn this deck on. And which is why I think that we've kind of seen some subtle success. I do think this last weekend was actually like not a great weekend for it.
Yeah.
I will say, I think that like this deck in a world where Ruby Sapphire is on top, we're a little more hesitant. It's a little more hard to kind
Yeah.
of like get through and really maintain board position. But
For sure.
I think it's cool. Like I love that if let's be honest, like if my one pet peeve, I don't know about you, like my one pet peeve though is the game doesn't feel like it actually really lets us be creative with archetypes.
Yeah.
So like this idea that Lady and Tramp come out, they're both dueling cards and they both work so well together. Like this concept of, okay, there might actually be something there to make this
Yeah.
competitive And if we just get enough people on it, like maybe someone's able to figure this out. That's what most intrigues me about this list, because like how many times you're just like, man, like I really wish there was just a frozen deck. I really
Yeah.
wish like the Madrigals like actually did anything important or relevant. Like
Hmm.
so when you start like thinking about those things, it's so cool that this might be one of the like real first times where you're like, okay, like this is the theme. Like all of these
Yeah.
cards work together. All these cards are competitive. So I think that that's cool.
Yeah. I think that, honestly, too, the thing is like I know a lot of folks are not fan of playing like traditional aggro. I know there's a lot of people that are just like, I don't want to play that. I want to feel like I have control options. I want to feel like I can do this and that. All you need to do, and anybody that's curious about the deck, is get one gamble with a tramp roll of cycling cards out, hitting a Chernabog, slapping the Chernabog down for free, and throwing that all back into your deck is like the greatest feeling. It's a Mufasa dying, flipping a Maleficent dragon, and killing someone's big board on the other side.
That is a
Um,
very interesting comparison, but okay. Okay.
it's a very satisfying feeling. I'll say that. So
Yeah,
if you can get the tramp roulette going and you get a Chernabog off of it, you'll be hooked.
I will say, shout out to Nate in chat here. Nate is he's a member of TFM, and he's been playing this deck a bunch, and he has been playing this Emerald Captain Hook in it, or
Oh, okay.
the Emerald Captain Hook, the one that turns pirates off from questing, and then when he's challenged, they
Oh,
draw cards. So that's kind of like another pseudo card that like people have to interact with and they have to like
yeah,
work with, and he's been very high on him. So shout out to Nate. We're hanging out with us this morning.
that's awesome.
So going to another one of your decks. Now this deck, again, I would say that this is fairly meta, right?
Yeah, I would
But we
agree.
have some we have some particular choices in here that I think are at least discussable. And I had said recently that I actually think that this deck is almost it almost is like in disguise as meta, because it's
Yeah.
still like super fair into like the better decks in the kind of in the game right now. But like, what is it about like this doc deck that you think you're still kind of stuck on and you think it has like success potentially?
So, like coming towards the end of set 6, I had switched back to blue steel. I was playing blue steel for just trying to mix it up. And when set 7 got announced and we saw that beautiful Sapphire, I was like, oh, I'm going to play blue steel. So I started playing blue steel right out the gate, and I'm not enjoying that mirror. I don't think the
Sure.
mirror's. I don't enjoy the mirror very much. So I'm not crazy about playing Ruby Sapphire. I played tradition, every now and then traditional Ruby Sapphire, but I wanted something that felt decent into both of those lists, which is why I went back to Amethyst Steel. So um, I think this deck is in a very great position to keep up. At least if they're not seeing favorable draws, you got a really good chance to just take the whole thing. But
Right.
Doc is like a top 3 card for me. So anytime I have the chance to play Doc, that's always going to be the case.
Sure.
The deck in general is just very fun and combo oriented, but it really does start to feel very aggro-y with Giant Cobra just in
Mhm.
general. Like I think the first time I did a Giant Cobra, pitched a card out of my hand, gain 2 lore play, Doc, draw 2 cards. That combo alone made me like, I'm in on this. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna play
Yeah.
this a lot right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the deck really does put you in a good position to, like, once you hit that 15, 16 lore area, you're really just like put your opponent in a very terrifying place.
Yeah.
You have
I,
such a high chance to flip it.
I feel like Cobra, and in some versions of this deck, like Cobra kind of represented a way that in most games you had to get to like 16.
Yeah,
So in a lot of those matchups, like I gotta get to 16 and then I can close it out. I
yeah,
actually think because of Cobra, the number can be closer to 12.
yeah. I would agree.
And that is a big difference. Because if you tell me that I only have to be aggressive enough to get to 12,
Yeah.
and then I can close out the game without ever caring if if I ever untap with the character again,
Hmm.
like that's a pretty big deal. And obviously we can utilize Pete and like, kind of find other ways to get there. But
Yeah.
I definitely had a game where I got to 12 quickly, and then the rest of my game I did not quest again, but I was able to win.
Yeah,
And that is like, whew, okay, like we're on to something here, guys.
for sure.
So I do agree. This is actually the list. We're gonna pivot real quick. This is the list that I've been working with for the anti meta. Like this is kind of like my version of like A, you're good into the mirror.
Yeah,
B, you're good into all like the other like aggressive steel decks that are going around. But it definitely came at the cost of just like feeling way too fair against the like Sapphire Steel item stuff.
yeah.
Because in all honesty, the truth about both of these decks, either one, is that turn one Bell sucks.
If,
like you do not have a good answer to turn one Bell. You're just like,
yeah,
yeah, uh, that card's really good. Wish you didn't
yeah,
have it. And there's also like a big confirmation there that for the last couple weekends, I've been dying of allergies. So all I've been doing is like watching these tournaments,
yeah.
and I can say that where I've seen Amethyst Steel have success is exactly the word you said. Like when those decks don't function at their best level,
Yeah.
you definitely punish them.
Big time.
So if you're that kind of person that you're like, you know what, I'm just gonna play my game. I'm just gonna play my deck. It gives me answers. It gives me options. And hey, if my opponent doesn't have a turn one, Bell, if they don't have a turn two Diablo, like if they don't find their Cinderella, like then this deck's gonna be really good. Like I'm gonna punish people,
For
and I
sure.
think that that is a good thing to have in Lorcana, right? Like
Hmm.
it's a good thing that not everyone has to feel like obligated to go play in these Sapphire decks with these huge like ink piles and all these like thought out turns. Like,
Yeah.
shout out to yesterday, Zan versus Bivens over on Wonderland's channel. You had these games where like Zan's taking 30, 45, 50 seconds sometimes just to make his turn of like, okay, what do I have to do? What is the order I have to do things? Not
Yep.
everyone can do that, right? Like it's not open to every player. So it is nice that we can have decks like this, like the Lady in the Tramp deck, like this aggro version of Amethyst Steel, because it just gives you the option of saying, you know what, I don't need to think about this. Like I'm just gonna
Hmm.
put my cards on the table and say, you think about this.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's kind of where I'm at with that. You just said that you are a Steel Fossa advocate, right? So Steel
That is
Fossa
me.
advocate. What? Why are we hooked on Fossa in set seven? The name really caught me.
It's been hooked on Fossa for the past four sets. So this is why we're hooked on Fossa set seven. You know, this deck holds a really just special place in my heart. I think I've won a lot of set champs with it. My highest placement I've had in like a 128 player tournament was with this deck. This is what I brought to Vegas for my first DLC, and it's just fun. It's just a fun deck. So you get a lot of um, annoying cards that you're slapping down in general, which is fun. There's a lot of just pressure situations that you put your opponent in, where it's like, while you are playing aggro, you're dropping Daisy Duck into Piglet, and then dropping a Smee and another Daisy or something, going and then building your curve out. It's like you also have these situations where Bagheera is being tested right now. Bagheera is typically Chinpo, but
Okay.
going wide and then leaving your opponent in a position where it's like, I'm 4 or 5 wide right now. I've got a giant bodyguard in front of me. If you don't take anything out, I'm going to play Rapunzel and draw a bunch of cards off of you. Like, I very much enjoy the play style of this deck. And then, like I said earlier, getting a high roll flip off of Mufasa is just like one of my favorite things to do in the game. So, um, yeah, that's why I love it.
I got to shout out TFM Pave here because he swears. All right, he swears that the only card that can be flipped with Mufasa is Maleficent. There's no other cards in any deck that like when you banish a Mufasa, it is 100% guaranteed going to be Maleficent Dragon. For me, that is just not true.
I've,
My biggest problem oftentimes is like Mufasa. Like, man, I love the design of the character. I think it's
mhm,
almost perfect. I do think that oftentimes people they live in this world where they're like, oh, I gotta hit the nuts. Like I have to hit
yeah,
Maleficent or my deck falters. I have to hit the big sea suit, right? Like what I like about this design of this deck is that you were just playing cards that are good. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know what the hell Rhino does. We're gonna have to talk about that in a second.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
like the rest of this deck is like, okay, like I know what all these cards do, I know how they function, and I think that they're all like pretty reliable cards and cards that we could definitely consider putting into play. And if we can do it for free, awesome.
Yeah,
So these are the versions of Mufasa that I very much enjoy. Like if it just is like, hey, I'm playing a good card that's always going to flip a good card.
yeah,
I'm always like, I think that that's where it accelerates. I also appreciate that we have 8 songs in this list.
yep,
So many times people are like, oh man, we have to play 60 characters because if we miss on Mufasa, we're dead. And it's
yeah,
like, okay, well, that might be true, but you're also playing like 1 and 2 costs in your deck. So like if we hit on our 1 or 2 costs on Mufasa, like we're dead anyway, right? Like
for
most
sure.
times it's like not gonna work. So if we understand that, hey, we probably need Let the Storm Rage on, we probably need Strength of Raging Fire to get to a point in the game that Mufasa can even win it for us.
Yeah,
Then it's like if we hit this card with Mufasa, we're probably losing the game anyway. Like
yeah,
if it was a 1-drop, we'd probably lose because very often not you see like, oh, there's like more 1s in here and there's more 2s in here. And you're like, all right, well, like you're just putting more 1s and 2s. It's the same exact equivalency of just having the song that actually like at one point in the game you're going to have 3-4 characters in play, and
yep.
Strength of Raging Fire is going to literally remove anything that you want it to. So I do appreciate that you have that in there. Now tell me, I without going to look at it, I don't even know what Rhino. What
so
does Rhino do?
so Rhino gives all of your characters +2 willpower.
Okay, so it's a Rapunzel's tower in a way.
Exactly, but it's
Okay.
also a 4/7 quest for 2.
All right,
So
it's got the stats.
it's got
We
it's
love
got the big
stats.
boy stats. Yeah, it
Okay.
really really does.
It is
Um,
unequal, right? What's that?
it is
5 or 6
unequal.
cost?
A 6 cost, which
Okay.
I don't really have a problem getting ink. I rarely brick on the deck. I think I'm sitting at 13 uninkable right now. I usually try to stay close to 12 or 13 with the deck. And he's incredible into everything other than Ruby Sapphire. Anything. I mean, if you're in a steel matchup, I was playing against blue steel with this list over the weekend. I slapped 2 rhinos down, and I was like, "My Daisy's humongous. You're not killing my Daisy. Hopefully, you have 2 Zeus's in there."
Yeah.
And the second the first one came down, my opponent was like, "That sucks." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, he's pretty good."
That,
Uh,
that like goes back to your point of like I just want to play cards that annoy people.
yeah, pretty much, pretty much. I mean, what's more annoying, someone slapping a rhino down on you, or someone big CCing your whole board? I'm
Right.
fair. I'm fair.
Right. Right.
But yeah, no,
That's fair.
Rhino MVP.
That is fair. All right, so I want to quickly go back to chat, right? Our question of the day is what is your favorite homebrew, right? We just talked about um, Luke's here. Sorry, I had a mind fart there. And I think it is cool, right? Like listen, we all know what the metagame is. We all know it's fun, not or not, depending on your opinion of it currently. But we all at home, and we got something, right? We have that list that we're like we go back to at the start of every single set. We're like, oh, how do I make this better? I know I have that deck, and I'm just curious, with the chat hanging out, doing their thing. What is it? What is that deck? What is that deck? You just told us, right? You said for you it's Steel Fossa. Like Steel
Yep.
Fossa is like the first deck you go back to every time. For me, the last couple sets now it's been Baja Blast, which spoilers, guys, in the second half of these decks we got some stuff to talk about. But I have established that recently it feels like Baja Blast is probably not there. Makes me a little sad. I did try for a little bit here. We got Jafar, right? So AJ is a fan of Baja Blast as well. We've been working on that
Mhm.
deck for a couple sets now. We have lots of conversations about it, but Jafar is the other one. I think that I was burned by Jafar like one time, and I'm like, yeah, I'm never gonna play this deck again. But I should have. I didn't include it. I should have included the Mickey surprise in our list here because a couple weeks ago or last week on the channel, Michelle Melissa was playing like the Mickey surprise deck on our
Yeah.
league night, and it's like one of those like, yeah, this is a cool new way to build Jafar, but like let's be honest, it's not good enough, and
Yeah.
it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
And so it is one of those like I love it, I hate it, but Emerald
That's what.
Sapphire, Hades Tala. Okay. Oh, that's right. So Nate's a home brewer for sure. Him
Mhm.
and Colby, they're always dropping like the most random things. The Hades is referencing here is the Emerald Hades, the one where you get to exert him, and then banish a character to put a bigger one in play of the same name. I think that card is terrible. Um, like I remember when it was first revealed, and I'm like, oh man, this card is wow, that's really good. And then like I read it again, I'm like, oh, it's only when you quest, it's not when you play it. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, we don't even get to quest, we got to exert, we don't even get lore. Like, oh my god, not a fan. So yeah,
No justice for my boy Hades since set
yeah,
one. Poor
yeah.
Hades.
Braden, yep, he said it himself. I'm going to put it on the video anyway for everyone to see it. He's super lame. Weight set. Oh, is that a card? Is that a deck that you ever mess with? Weight set. This was like a meme for a while. Like people were like, "Oh yeah, there's four strength characters. We're gonna get it." I never believed in it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely tried for a while to do weight set Li Shang, like just essentially like the strength build. When the new Maximus got announced, I was like, I tried to go into it pretty heavily,
Okay.
and it's one of those things. It's like when it hits, it feels incredible, but most of the time it doesn't. So so,
Yeah.
so then
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
you're just telling people like, well, when it does work,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
awesome.
That's it's actually really funny. That comes up in coaching so much. You
Sure.
know, sometimes it's just like they'll send you the deck, and you're just like, yeah, you can do that, but it's probably only gonna work 10% of the time. So like if
Yeah.
all you want to do in your league this week is get like 1 out of your 10 games to be like, oh my god, I did the thing, then like, hey man, like do the thing.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about going to set championships, we're talking about going to like Disney Lorcana challenges and stuff like that. Like I cannot in good faith tell you to bring this deck.
Yeah. I got really lucky in Vegas. I was a big believer in. I still am. I love this card, but I was a big believer in 7 cost Ralph. Play it down, pick something back up from your
Princess.
trash. If
Yeah.
it's a princess, gain 2 lore.
Yeah.
I went flawless into Ruby Sapphire on
Yeah.
Amber Steel there
Yeah.
because of that Ralph, and that was my whole thing. I was like, this Ralph is going to win me games. When this Ralph works, it's incredible. Whatever this and that. And it worked out for me. But that's
Yeah.
like the exception. He's a good
Right,
card.
right, 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 right.
He's a good card put in a good position.
You're like some days I'm gonna run hot. This
Yeah,
card can be
for sure.
awesome, and then other days you're gonna be like, what happened?
Yeah, for sure.
Ruby Steel is probably the newest, right? We did see some breath of it. It's really funny. It feels like once a set since Shimmering Skies, we've seen it. I think it was in Vegas. The top 64 was the Ruby Steel locations deck, or like kind of like the Dwarven Mines, version, and like kind of really just double downing on some of those cards. And then we had seen the combo deck with Maui Shark that came out, Fan the Flames, Maui Shark. That was kind of cool. And then this past weekend we saw like this just like aggro deck. So like that's another one that people really seem to go to. This is one that I don't know. So like the Megara and Hercules, I know that these are both Emerald characters. I can't exactly remember what the mill version of this looks like, but I know that it does come up. I've seen it happen a couple times. Is it just Emerald Steel? I think it might just be Emerald Steel Mill with Whole New Worlds. I think that's what this is.
So
And this is one that just never panned out, right? Oh, this one is great. I love the Huey, Dewey, and Lewis deck. Fun fact: our friend TFM Colby, he actually top 4 to set championships
oh,
with
nice.
Amber Sapphire Ducks. It
That's
was
awesome.
awesome. Huge shout out to our friend Sam. He is one of the game designers for Ravensburger. In every single DLC that he comes to, if you sit across him for gunslinging, playing Constructed, on
Mhm.
it on almost in all of them, he's playing the Ducks. He's
That's
a big Duck
awesome.
fan. So I think that's a good one. I think that's a good one. Hoping okay, all right. We're talking about league tonight already. We're getting ready for it. Low curve blurple, probably Alice Illusion. Well, I got something coming up for you guys. We that might be on the list here today. Hades is my favorite character by far, and he has so many unplayable cards. Yeah, well,
Yep, that's the truth.
Sapphire Steel Wheel is always something I want to keep good. Well, there's at least one person in Disney Lorcana figuring it out still.
Yeah, yeah. It had pretty decent success with it too. I think. I mean, I saw. I was watching Lamb play. I can't remember what the tournament was. I think it was that Ink Invitational that was a week or two ago.
Yeah.
And watching Lamb play, I mean, he was against items, and I that match is incredible to watch. If you want to watch someone who's a true master of blue steel with all
Yeah.
the,
It's
that matchup's
also,
incredible.
I think I had heard Katie say this weekend. It's exhausting.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. That's very
Hard
fair.
not to agree that it can certainly be exhausting. Amber Sapphire songs with the new Isabella as a win condition. So I really like this Isabella. It's definitely a card that I would love to say that it's going to be good enough, but doesn't feel there yet. Doesn't feel there yet. Emerald Steel, come on, man, come on, come on, come on.
Which embers?
Uh,
Emerald Steel Pirates, right? That's what you mean.
Emerald Steel Pirates. There we
Yeah,
go. Yeah,
Emerald Steel
just
Pirates.
like here, right? We have Emerald Steel Pirates here.
Yeah.
And then we have the Ruby Emerald Evasive. Yeah. So this deck always gets something because like it feels like it's the only time we get evasive characters. It's now in the same combination, and
Yeah.
sometimes they're not even that good. But hey, Fidget this past weekend picked up a second place finish. So we never know. Never know. Thank you guys for hanging out with us so far this morning. If you haven't yet, make sure you hit that like button. Also, for us, again, Dad Kana in the house. If you're on YouTube, links in the description. I got you down there. We're gonna talk about Instagram in a little bit here, but for now, we'll keep it moving. We'll keep it moving, and I think that this one is the epitome of off meta,
For
and
sure.
it's hitting on different levels, and it picked up a first place win this past weekend. Okay, this deck is very exciting to me. I
Yeah.
think that it is 100% attacking the metagame in the correct way. I think that it's a deck that I'm sure this player really caught some people off guard. When we think what Amethyst Emerald is doing in the metagame, it is certainly not playing cards like Prince John and Sudden Chills and Hypnotize, right? Like that is
Yeah.
when I think about this list, I mean, we don't even think about Diablo in this deck. Traditionally Diablo is not played in the same combination. So this is very much a very off meta feel. Really nice to see it come in and get a first place victory. When you saw this list, hoping you saw it before
I
I sent
have. Yeah, I've played against it a few times now.
what were your first thoughts about it?
This is so exciting to see. Like, especially for where we are right now.
Right.
When you look at a top 8 of a tournament and you see that it's 75% Ruby Sapphire, some blue steels in there, and then an occasional that red purple that made it through,
Yeah.
that one red, like that's kind of draining. So I think there's this one placed first, and I think there was two in Charlie's Collectible that was in top 16.
I know. Yeah, I know there was at least one. I don't know
Yeah,
about two. Yeah, I know
I
Traverse Tavern ended up in top 16.
yeah, Traverse Tavern was definitely in there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was so stoked when I saw this list. I was really hoping that I would see somebody playing it soon too. So yesterday I actually played against this like 4 times.
Oh
Um,
shit.
but I hadn't seen the list yet actually. So somebody had dropped turn 1 Diablo and then turn 2 dropped the Duel Link, and I was like,
Yeah.
"What are you doing?" I was thinking it was tempo,
Yeah.
something. I was like, "Oh, okay, I guess they got that there for other Diablos." And then he shifted in, played Sudden Chill, took a card from me after slapping PJ down, and I was like, "Oh my god!" So the first person I played, I caught hands very
You're,
badly.
you're like, I'm in danger.
Yeah, Q Ralph. Yeah, no, the first matchup I went in, I caught incredible hands. I got
Yeah.
destroyed, and I
Yeah.
just didn't know what was going to be played. And when you're playing against a deck like that, uh, it's very exciting. Like, it's exciting to see somebody trying something so different and then also having success with it. So no, this list is awesome.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where this is like that type of deck where now that it exists, now that it's out there, now that
Yeah,
it's public knowledge, two things happen. One, maybe it doesn't catch people off guard as easily. Maybe we understand what's going on. Maybe we can plan against a little bit better.
yeah,
But what it also does is it offers up some serious information to Emerald Amethyst players that are they don't know. Like when you look at this deck and you go, oh yeah, check out my 4 drops. Oh, I don't have goat. Like people are like, wait a
yeah,
minute, like you're not playing goat. Like what's going on? Like
yeah. Why
why
would you
why are
play
we
that?
playing Iago? Like what's
Yeah.
going on? Like But like that's what I love. I love more importantly than anything, I love when you see stuff like this because
Yeah.
I feel like we get so trained, we're so just like accustomed that like you see a card be so good for so long and you just think like, oh, I cannot build this deck without it. Like
Yeah.
it's impossible to do, like when we first saw the early transitions of the Queen's Castle, right? Like when the library came out, nobody wanted to. Nobody, I mean, like nobody wanted to go. Oh, the library is good. That
Yep.
was one of my favorite cards in the set. Shimmering
For sure.
Skies, played it day one, loved it. But a lot of people are like, no, it can't be better. Cannot be better than the Queen's Castle. That
Yeah.
is
We were
blasphemy,
blinded
right?
by Queen's Castle.
You're
Yeah.
like, guys, it's better, like for a lot of different reasons.
For sure.
And it was so difficult. I mean, honestly, it took, for being completely honest, it took until Ed, like
Yep.
Ed had to win Continentals, with library in his deck to go, guys, like we don't need Queen's Castles anymore. It's not the card we want to be playing. And
Yeah.
I think that Goat is another one of those cards. I think that even Snake and Rabbit, like when Genie first came out, people were like, oh, there's no way Genie's better than Rabbit, and like
Hmm.
there's all these conversations, and a lot of times it comes into Amethyst, and I think it's because, and there's one other argument to be made, but I think Amethyst is the one that's easier because there's actually choice now. In set two, when we got all these cards, and they were so good. I mean, they were so much better than basically everything else we can be doing.
Yeah.
It's so hard to think that we are now in set seven and we are just finally getting cards to replace these things. Like
Yep.
it's just a fact. Like we're finally getting to a point where there's enough cards, there's enough choice, there's enough opportunity to where we can say, you know what, maybe it's not the right card anymore.
For sure.
Uh, the only other comparison that is not fair is Steel Songs. I mean,
Yeah.
like Let the Storm Rage On, Zeus, and Strength of a Raging Fire. Like those are the like that's it, right? Like
Yep.
there are no Steel Songs in set 6 and 7 that you're like, yeah, this is gonna replace Strength of a Raging Fire. Like
Yeah. No.
nope, no,
No
no, no.
shot.
So like that's like the one argument is like, okay, well, like this happens for some archetypes but not others. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think I love seeing when you see this type of innovation and you're like, oh man, there's no goats in this list, there's no snakes in this list.
Yep.
Improvise, like I bet you a lot of people looked at this list like, what the hell does improvise do?
Yeah. I actually literally said that. So when the dude used improvise on me yesterday, I was like, what does that even do? I have
Yeah,
no clue what that. I have no idea what the interaction was, but
yeah.
yeah, it's awesome.
So I definitely think this is like, to me, this is like the winner of the week. Like
For
this came
sure.
out, wins a 74 player tour. That's not nothing, right? That's
Yeah.
8 rounds. 8 rounds cut the top eight, I believe. If I'm doing that, maybe it's seven. Maybe it's seven. Yeah, 7 rounds cut the top eight. Like that's awesome.
Yeah.
So huge shout out there. Always fun.
This is not off meta.
Dad Kana with the super off meta spice.
This is not. This is not. This was my first list going into the set though, so I included it in here because it is a
That's
strong
fair.
blue steel. So
That's fair. So do we think that we're getting to a portion, right? So all right, like I think the reason why I included it still is Ruby Sapphire just came out, 1-2 finish, 3 of them in the top 8 of the biggest tournament of the weekend. It's going to be back on people's radar,
yeah.
Does Ariel now find a place? Do we need Ariel to win the Ruby Sapphire match? Or not necessarily to win, but I kind of look at Ariel, like if I'm being honest, right? I look at Ariel and I'm like, you know what? It's kind of a cheat code,
For
like
sure.
they're just, it basically says like in any which case where I can set up Pete plus Ariel, I might just win the game. And like, listen, anyone that's been following, Lamb for the last, like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months, that's what he's been doing for a while now. Like
Yep.
just setting up a board that goes, yep, Pete, Ariel, go. You can't be prepared to me. You can't Sisu my Ariel. Like that's not possible.
Yep.
So you got to find a way to answer the dime. Like, do we think that we might need that? Coming in these next few weeks potentially.
I feel like so I never took her out. There's been a lot of changes with this list in general. Like I've played the super only items heavy Oswald. I've done all that stuff just to try it. Um, but I never took Ariel out no matter what build I was trying, and
Sure.
it is literally because of Ruby Sapphire. Like it is a cheat code. It's a B prep or bust.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I mean,
with
like
like
it's like when Ruby Amethyst was high, it was like the absolute cheat
for
code. You're like,
sure,
yeah, you can't answer my dime, you can't answer my Ariel, like you're
yeah.
dead.
I mean, the crazy thing is too, like, Ruby Sapphire, sure, but if you're playing against any deck that is non-item based, it's pretty much over. If they don't have any type of item removal, it's a free game. You
Yeah,
slap one popsicle down, one dime, and an Ariel, and you just keep tapping the dime. And that
right.
might sound cheesy, but
Yeah,
look,
I
sometimes you
mean,
got to
I
do it.
said like, listen, like up, up, down, down, left, right, AB start, right? Like sometimes we just gotta hit the buttons, guys.
For sure,
Like
for
uh,
sure.
cheat codes. They're not for everyone, but yeah, listen, if they're gonna give it to us, we're gonna sometimes gotta take
You
them.
got to. The one
No
thing
big
I
deal.
will say that I added in here, and I added in here because of R&B specifically,
Hmm.
and it's cool to see it come back because it's a set two card that I remember seeing very minimal play, which is Last Cannon.
Yeah,
Last Cannon's so much value. I mean, you can Last Cannon your Bell in one shot, Flaversham.
yeah,
Like
that sounds awesome.
and
You know
and
what it also
having
does?
what's that?
Right? Like it gets rid of all those pesky locations that people are
Yeah,
playing. You see a
for
Ruby
sure.
Amethyst deck come out, and they're like, "Oh yeah, check out my locations." Like, I
Yeah,
mean, we like Shield of Arendelle. Like, it's a cool card.
for sure.
But if you tell me that like for just like this last cannon as a very simple transition choice
For
that I
sure.
can just start eating away locations. Guess what, guys? Like the Forbidden Mountain, it was on display last weekend. It was great. It was on multiple streams. Yeah, well, our Bell can just eat that too. We don't really care.
Yeah. And it is something that Sapphire Steel really needs in that Ruby Sapphire matchup too, because we don't have that one shot option for Flaversham. That
Yeah,
matchup is brutal.
right.
You play it, you get small C suit right away, and you're like, I'll get you back, and you never can.
Right,
So
right. Like, yeah,
have,
just literally, like they're always gonna draw four cards.
for sure,
Like
guaranteed.
always.
Yeah.
So
So having an option for it is nice, but I include it just because this is what I've been playing when I'm not playing Purple Steel, and
when he
it's a
actually
solid
wants
card.
to win, guys, that's all I'm hearing. That's all I'm
Yeah,
hearing.
if I really want to win, yeah. I will say I played Ruby Sapphire last night, a very different list.
Yeah, and you hate
I,
yourself for it.
I felt terrible. I had like 18 ink. My opponent didn't play anything for 5 turns, and I was like, cool, I'll just gotta take these out of the
Yeah,
series.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
felt terrible. So
That's mostly how I felt when I was playing Bend to My Will, for sure.
oh yeah, that's the
You
one
just like you show up to a tournament and you're like, yeah, I'm playing this deck for like research, more than anything.
for pain.
And you're probably gonna hate it, and I'm sorry.
Yeah,
But sometimes we gotta do what we gotta do, right?
you gotta try it.
So I have been having a little bit of fun. This is a
Oh
list
wow,
that I very much am Team Oswald.
yeah,
I think Oswald is very cool. I think it's very creative. I think we have been dying for Oswald to break the metagame as much as it did. Now, granted, it had a lot of help. Bell, Tamatoa,
yeah.
Scrooge, three very large additions to the metagame that kind of really put this over the top. But this is the list that me and Colby have been kind of working on the last couple of weeks, and I think it's pretty fun. I think it's
This is
different.
sweet.
The number one card here that everyone's going to read and be like, I don't even know what on earth that card does is Sardine Can.
I'm a
Uh,
sardine can believer.
I am not even a believer of Sardine Can. I don't think there is any world that I'm ever going to exert 4 ink to put that card in play. But if I just ink for turn and it flips over, I'm gonna be pretty happy about it.
Yeah,
So for those that don't know, Sardine Can is why it's the item that says while your characters are exerted, they gain ward. So what that really does is that it makes Peter Pan a gigantic pain in the ass. Like it really does. Emerald Coil, another card that people probably aren't very familiar with. That is when you ink, you give a character evasive. So this deck actually has the ability to just go, I'm going to give my Peter Pan evasive, and it has ward.
yep.
Um, Deal with it.
Yeah, this is build your own hero Hamada.
Yeah, in a way,
Yeah,
which we have another hero deck later because I'm a very big fan of hero too.
yeah,
But like what I've learned in the last couple weeks that it's very difficult to make all of it work, and you
yeah,
kind of really just have to choose the direction. I think that's like the biggest part of like building these homebrews is that you like, oh my god, all this stuff, it does all the stuff. Like I just
yeah,
want to do all the stuff, and then you kind of like get sidetracked of like what the actual purpose of the game is, and that's where I think a lot of people falter in homebrews is
for
like
sure.
just because you can do everything does not mean that you should. And we gotta learn some restraint to kind of show success.
Yeah,
And while I think Oswald's really cool. I think it's a great card. I think that I think that core for Sapphire right now is obviously very good.
for
And
sure.
I do think in a world where Ruby Sapphire maybe becomes more of a bigger target, you have to understand that people like they can't the biggest problem with the metagame right now is that you can't just like walk in and say I'm going to be good against both Ruby Sapphire and Ruby Steel and all the versions of Ruby Sapphire and Ruby Steel. Like it's actually like it's just very difficult. So
Yeah,
when you say that, people have to start making choices, and even Ruby Sapphire are going to have to start making choices. Like some of
yeah,
those cards that they're playing, they're not necessarily good in the mirror either. So like
yeah,
they're going to have to now make choices of how they adapt their deck to the metagame and stuff like that. So that's when I look at like why Oswald was so good in week one is because he was a threat that people didn't have enough answers to. Well, now
absolutely.
we can just go back and you're like, you know what? I'm going to turn back on. I'm just going to say, hey, I'm going to double down here. If you're not going to answer my Oswald and you're going to let me run away with the game, awesome.
Yeah,
And if that's just the way that you want to play into the meta, I think that it's a choice you can make. It's kind of a choice where we're all making. It's the same thing
yeah,
with Amethyst Steel right now. It's like I think you can build Amethyst Steel to be straight aggro, and you can just say, I don't care.
yep,
You can stop me, great. If you can't, I'm going to punish you. I think Oswald, in a way, is going to also demand an answer. It's going to create these versions of these decks where you're like, if you do not interact, I promise you, I will beat you.
yep.
So that's kind of what I really like about what Oswald can do, and I wanted to showcase like a very different version. Like when we think Emerald Sapphire, we do not think items, right? Like
I love
it's
this.
it's not on the mind. It's not on the mind. But I think it's fun. I think it's different. It's definitely this is probably like my biggest like Emerald Sapphire in general. I think at the beginning of the season I had like 8 different versions of Ink Geyser. I'll be honest, guys. Uh, I like to play more fun things at League when I'm able to go because I don't like want the players there to get discouraged or anything like that. So I played Inkizer one week and I actually made someone like feel really uncomfortable. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to go to League anymore and play Inkizer because I just don't want to. I don't want people to be upset or like annoyed.
Yeah.
So like I'm trying to find more creative things to do. And like this is probably the deck that the next time I'm able to get the League, I'm gonna bring this one with me. I think it's different. I think it's had fun. Now, granted, it might not be fun to sit across from a warded, evasive Peter Pan. That might be true.
Just a little bit.
That may be true.
That's fair.
So this is a shout out to our good friend James. He's TFM James. We haven't had him on the channel yet, but he's there. He hangs around. He actually took this to League last week, and I did have a version of this deck out pretty early on, and he very much enjoyed it. And the real Dick Burns actually hated it. He he actually brought it to the League one night, and he's just like, "This deck is trash. Don't talk about this deck. This deck is awful." And James was very much of the other mindset. He goes, no, like this deck actually might be cool. It actually might do some things. So he went 3-0. He went undefeated in his league last week. And we were talking about it. And I wanted to put it out there, like saying, hey, guys, you can still be aggressive. You can still have funs. This is my family. Really awesome card. Bosses on a Roll is a card that I registered in a DLC. Okay. Like I played that card in a
Yeah.
DLC to a top 128 finish. Like it's a real card. It gains lore. It does some things. But what are you thinking about like this type of aggressive style? Like you think that we still can have some off meta success with this?
Yeah, I mean, this is again one of those decks that just can completely catch you off guard. I
Right.
think people start to see, maybe you ink Diablo and then you slap Daisy Duck down, and they're like, okay,
Yeah.
they start prepping themselves to know what they have to go into. But people aren't expecting you to drop Golden Harp and then have 18 songs. This is crazy. I saw it at the top and I was like, oh, that's an interesting choice because I just looked at Bosses on Roll and Friends
Right.
and I was like, oh wait. So
Wait.
I
There's 10 more songs
yeah,
here.
that's crazy. I could definitely see this being successful. I actually played on Saturday. I was playing before I went back to a more control based Amethyst Steel. I was playing a burn list, and I was
Okay.
using This Is My Family and Honey Marin and Honey Marin at MVP, but also This Is My Family was incredible for having like a 2-cost singer, being able gave me a lore, draw a card like in a deck that doesn't have to play Amethyst Coil and give your opponent cards and have these options. I think is really nice. So
Yeah. Amethyst Coil is one of those cards so difficult, right? Like
yeah, for sure.
you love to think that I say this very often. I know when you build a deck, when you build a deck like a whole new world, like you're the whole new world deck. You're gonna get the most out of it.
Yeah,
Like you're gonna get all the perks of it. Um, but the truth is, with Amethyst Coil is that you're really not getting much more perk out of it.
Yeah.
The addition of paying two at any point in time to put this into play means that it has to pay for itself. You have to get the most out of it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just like don't, you know?
Hmm.
So it's so difficult because you want it to be successful, which is why normally I'm more of a team library fan, even in the aggro decks. Like I understand it costs more, but I do think it gives us a little more leeway. It also gives us, that extra lore. Like Amethyst
Yeah.
Chromacon doesn't give us lore, so in
That's
my
funny.
world, for aggressive decks to maintain like pressure, you can't really take a turn off to not put presence into play.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Amethyst Coil does. And honestly, most times the turn that you play Amethyst Coil, you're not even drawing a card that turn
Yeah.
because generally speaking, you're giving your opponent value first with their card than you are on the turn you play it.
Yeah.
So that's why it's always weird for me. But I do think it's this is like one of those absolutely like having 8 cards in my deck that are cost 1. Actually, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, 12 cards in my deck that cost 1 that have 4 willpower.
Yeah.
That's not nothing,
No,
like
not at all.
that is quite annoying because right now we're seeing steel decks are like, dude, how do I get rid of these cards? Like this is so
Yeah.
frustrating. And then the added bonus is that this is a card that we did talk about. This deck in this version of it is much more on the budget friendly version of this for
Yep.
sure because there are no Rapunzels. But Rapunzel is always a card that I think you consider. Like if we
Yeah.
honestly, like even if you don't want to play Goat, which is kind of crazy to say, but if you don't want to play Goat and just put Rapunzel on this list, like at least you understand that hey, I can gain some extra reach there. But if we are, I think the coolest thing about off meta is that when people can make off meta be successful,
Yep.
it's normally on the budget side because the majority of the makeup the list is like not known commodity in the secondary market and things like that. So uh, the moment you can say, hey, I can build an Amber deck that doesn't include Rapunzel, which is obviously insane,
Yep.
yeah, you might get that benefit. That's actually the worst part. Sometimes when we're doing like those deck reviews and stuff like that, it's like, yeah, listen, if you bought Rapunzels in chapter 1 and they're just like hanging out, great, because it means that this deck cost you nothing.
Yeah.
But if you didn't buy Rapunzels ever, then yeah, sadly this deck is still over $200 because Rapunzels are $50 each.
I know and then you have to go through the conversation of telling them like it is good value though. You
Yeah,
have to like
like,
you will use it if you get it.
yeah,
But
and there's a
still.
couple cards like that right now. Like
Yeah.
Doc was one of those cards. Like,
Yep.
and it turns out Strength of a Raging Fire also became one of those cards, which is
Yeah.
crazy, right? Strength of a Raging Fire was
20.
like a $5 card forever. Now it's like $18 or something like that. Like it is
Yeah.
outrageous.
I foiled mine out, but I've been playing Amber Steel for a really long time, and like so I foiled mine out when they were about $7 a foil, and I
Yeah,
remember speaking, I was like, man, that's crazy to pay $7 a foil for a string. Like it's a great card, but I just I was still like thinking it would be a little bit cheaper.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
$35.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like
Like
what? What?
yeah, to foil out my steel song deck now, it is not cheap.
Yeah, no joke. Also,
But
I will say because I think I set you off on the wrong name, and we were both doing it. Amethyst Chromacon, not Amethyst Coil. Amethyst
oh,
Chromacon gives
my
the
bad.
card.
No, it
No,
is
that's
Amethyst
me because
Coil,
I think
100%.
I said it
Amethyst
first.
Coil is
Yeah,
trash.
yeah,
So yeah, that whole spiel there. If you were like, this guy, so what the hell's good? Yeah, no. Amethyst Coil is actually garbage.
yeah.
Amethyst Chromacon. Yeah, yeah.
It
I'm
was
with you.
me. It was my
I'm
fault.
with you. I'm with you. Chromacons, coils, these Lorcana items that we don't know anything about.
Yeah.
Now this list, it's fine. So we'll just transition perfectly into a list that does include it.
There you
Uh,
go.
so shout out to Dick Burns. Like last night at like 2 a.m, he does his 2 a.m. thing, and he posts this like crazy blurple Alice list that he like wants to just get some feedback on. And he just woke up probably when he made that comment, like 20 minutes ago or something like that. But we had a whole conversation about what this deck could look like this morning. So this deck is like literally fresh off the gate. It's like the first version of this, just off a conversation in the team chat that we have. And I was like, you know what? This is perfect for off meta conversations because it's including some of these cards that we've seen included in the Sapphire list right now, which is Glean. Like I made a comment a couple weeks ago. Glean is an inkable gathering knowledge and wisdom, guys, like
Yep.
for the right deck. So this is like literally fresh. We're talking 90 minutes ago this was made, and I said, hey, I'm putting this in the show today.
This list is sweet.
Uh,
I went on a tangent about Glean last week actually with my team. We were going back and forth on it because I was like, you can pop any item. It could be your opponent's item or yours, and you gain 2 lore, which is
Yeah,
like huge.
yeah, and like in a pinch, your opponent gaining 2 lore from Lucky Dime is much better than 12.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so have you ever kind of like this is a list that I think has been I think for a long time. Like let's just talk about because we can make an argument that Alice is a very off meta card until like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah,
So I remember when Alice was first revealed, in Nazarite Sea, like we actually had shout out to Braden. He brought like this Amethyst Steel deck like week 1 with him that was based around Alice, and I was like, no, I think this deck is cool. I think there might be something there. I think there's something to do with it, and I think that's cool because it's a card that really no one was talking about. It is by itself so bad as a card on the draw,
yeah,
which I think that we can even see on display very often that Kiwi aggro in general is like not a good deck on average on the draw unless your opponent like really falters and kind of just like messes up. But I
yeah,
think that it's like by design, it's a character that it's not like meant to be win more, but it's kind of how it feels in a
yep.
way. So like what are your thoughts on Alice in general?
Um, I think Alice is a great card when you can build the board for it. Like if you can actually get the setup and have it stick and start the engine of quest and have protection at the same time, like it can be really powerful. I think the combo that I've used this with that has felt the most like whoa, this can really put somebody down is like actually if you step outside of steel entirely
Sure.
and just stick to Sapphire and go with the 2 cost Ana. I think it's Braving the Storm is the
Yeah,
card.
the 1/4
Yeah, 1/4 gets 1+ lore for if you have a
for
hero in play.
heroes.
So since Alice is a hero,
Yeah.
if you can get those two working together, you're gaining like what is that 5 lore? I
5.
think you're getting
5
5 lore
lore
every
turn.
turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's pretty good. It's just
Yeah, I mean,
and you're throwing ward out too on the other.
yeah.
Honestly, you're protected from brawls and stuff like that, but obviously all it takes is one Maui to disrupt the entire thing. But if you can get that engine going,
Yeah.
if
I
there's no
think
answer, it'll take off.
that was like my first comment this morning was like, hey, obviously Alice has potential,
Yeah,
but the reason it's so good in steel is because you can actually like obviously like Pluto is so good.
for
The turn
sure.
3-4 into Pluto really hard to deny like the power level of that.
Yeah,
And I think it's really about like, hey, we understand that Alice is good, but she has faults.
for
And
sure.
when you put her in a package with steel and you get those Plutos, or you get like a Gontu or something like that, that's a card
Yeah,
that like when you're able to set up like saying like, hey, I'm going to put a character into play, and then that awesome character that like normally gets banished because everything in the world can banish it, all of a sudden has ward.
yeah,
Awesome. I do think that like when we can kind of double down and put her with Cogsworth, it just makes her that much more difficult to deal with.
for sure.
And like the first list that was put out there by Dick, like when I looked at it, I'm like, you know what? Like this isn't an Alice deck. Like I
Yeah,
think Alice is cool, but none of these cards actually support Alice. And I think that that's the real truth is that we need for her to be successful, she needs the supporting cast that protects her well, like that
for sure.
Chempo, that Pluto. I think that's why like we've seen it really only successful there.
Yeah,
But there is ways like if we can find other ways to utilize it, I think that's great. I think Cogsworth in Sapphire alone is probably a route that you want to hit on because you're just like giving resist to 4 willpower characters has already been kind of proven to be like a good thing.
for sure.
So yeah, that Ana I think is really cool. I think 4 willpower is like just a stat in general that people have to get past. Like if everyone's putting
Yeah,
3 threes into play on turn 1, well, my 4 willpower card is like pretty good.
yeah,
So yeah, I don't know. It's so tough though. Like my biggest problem with all these decks is that going second, you have to do it like 50% of your games on average. So
yeah.
like,
Somewhere around
uh,
there.
like if I lose a die roll in the best of 3, and all of a sudden I'm playing 2 games on the draw, I gotta feel like I have
Yeah,
agency in the game. And I think Anna's like, I mean, I think like I think Anna uh and Alice are like both cards. Like, man, on the draw, like, is this card really good? Is this the card I
yeah.
need? So that's kind of where I go with those things.
Well, I think the thing too, like, and this just shows the value that Bell has added to Sapphire in general is like, if you look at Kiwi in set 6, which was using Alice, like the way to shut it off was just to get a Lawrence down and then one shot it, right? Like that
Yeah.
was that was the way to answer it. And the second that you turned off the Alice engine, that matchup became tremendously easier.
Yeah.
Now we're in a position now where we slap the Alice down, but then we also have a 3/3 Bell that's been staring at you for the past 2 turns.
Yeah.
And and all of a sudden there's a whole different level of pressure.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and it's so that really speaks to like what that Bell has done to Sapphire in general, and why Alice is even more successful right now than she was in the previous set. But
Yeah. Yeah, and then the other thing to note is that there's a lot less amethyst in the world,
yeah,
because of the decline of ruby amethyst, and even some versions that are like, I'm not going to play fox, like stuff like that. That also was a huge point for Alice to be successful, because the
yeah,
worst thing you want to do is like when we don't have Pluto, and we don't
yep.
have that line, all of a sudden they trade their one cost card into a fox, and it banishes your Alice. And you're just like, yeah, that sucked. Like, yeah, that was my whole game for like the next 3 turns.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
crap. What are you gonna do? So my other Baja Blast enthusiast here, right, is Hiro. I love Hiro, guys, and yeah, there's sardine cans in this list again. And I did promise. I listen when Colby presented me with this list. And I said, Colb, are we really like? Are we ever gonna pay to put sardine can into play? And he's like, bro, like, how do you answer? Like, how do you answer evasive word? Peter Pan. I'm just like, man, I don't know, but like, am I really gonna pay for sardine can? And I gave this to a list. I gave this list to this past weekend to a friend. Shout out to Jorge in Puerto Rico, and I'm pretty sure he cut the sardine cans. Like I can't remember what the card he played over sardine can is right now, but he did. He had a successful this weekend. He top aided his event. And he had some good comments about the deck. So I think it's cool. I think Hero is awesome, and maybe there's a world that he has a place in this metagame. I think Morph in any list right now. I think Morph in Sapphire. I'm sorry, more than Emerald Steel is very threatening because you have old like really threatening cards. But
Yeah,
I think in this list, it can be pretty threatening. Like turn 4, um, Baymax is real good. Like it is
yeah,
real good. Turn 4, Clarabelle having other options is real good. Hero is one of those cards that if like there are decks right now, like especially the Ruby Sapphire decks, if they're not leaning on Shark, how the hell do they interact with Hero Hamada?
yeah,
Like they are be prepared or bust.
yep,
So I think that this deck might have some position in the metagame, and this is certainly a deck that says if you can't figure this out, like if you don't have like a good answer, like
yep,
I will punish you. And that's also attributing to the Your Welcomes and Let It Goes here. They're like, you know what? Like I'm just going to answer the one card you have that messes with this matchup.
yep.
And that's really what this deck is about. What are your thoughts looking at this deck from your point of view, though?
So I've played against versions of it quite a few times, and to be honest with you, if you're playing in Steel,
Mm-hmm.
you run out of answers pretty quick to kill all the
Oh yeah,
shift targets. Like you know, even if you have the nuts, like it's kind of hard to answer all these shift targets that are getting put down. And once the hero gets the shift, you're really like you're kind of in a bad spot
yeah.
unless you're running something really like you're running that Li Sheng that when it quests it gives your board evasive or something. Like you have to be running something that's
Wow,
pretty spicy to
that card is
answer.
terrible.
It is, right? But I'm just saying, like, what else are you gonna have that's gonna hit? You
Yeah,
can't you get what 3 grab your swords?
yeah, yeah,
It's like
yeah.
there and that was the thing. I've lost it a few times, and most of the time it was like, all right, I used all my Zeuses to kill the small. They were using like the shift line with Jasmine, the green
Yep.
Jasmine, the one that goes in.
The one that heals, right? That one.
No, they were using the one
Oh, the
where
bounce back one.
yeah,
Sorry, yeah, there are two of
exactly.
them.
They're using that.
I'm an OG supporter of the Chapter 1 Floodborn Jasmine.
I could see that. Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
I see you got Aurora in here, which is already
yeah, yeah. But there was a. I actually listen. I'm a huge Frozen fan, right? For
okay.
those that don't know. So when Grand Pabby was revealed, like early on, I literally took a Grand Pabby Ruby Sapphire, heal deck, and it was like we called it the Grand Pabby bomb, and the jasmine was a very big part of how to make the grandpappy bomb work.
Yeah.
So I always think consider her. But yeah, the emerald one that bounces stuff back. Yeah, that's a cool card.
Yeah, I mean, I went through all my removal like right out the gate because I was like, I knew what they were trying to do, but I ran out. The hero got the shift in. Next thing I know, they're dropping one card down and then shifting it immediately on the same because I had so much ink, and I was like, I guess I lose. You lose. They
Hell
put you on
yeah,
like a 3 turn clock pretty quick
yeah,
once
yeah,
they have the shift,
yeah.
especially if they get the Clarabelle too. Like,
Yeah,
oh
I
my
mean,
gosh, brutal.
Clarabelle, like literally, Clarabelle plus Hero, you're just like, that's 5 lower turn basic work.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing? Like,
Yeah.
how do we compete with this?
I will also just throw it out there is I'm probably the worst host or worst guest you could have come on here to
Okay.
talk about not spending 4 for Sardine Can because the first 32 plus player tournament I ever top aided in it was because of Sardine Can. I was running I was running Emerald Sapphire aggro and I was running like Big Maleficent and all that stuff and I was just slapping Sardine Can and it carried me.
I mean, like, listen, if it's proof of concept and you're like, nah, man, like you can pay 4 for that card, it'll be okay. I
Yeah.
guess.
It's expensive for sure.
I look at a world where if I pay 4 for Sardine Can and then like the next turn, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm good. I'll insert my cards. This is awesome. And then you're just like, yeah, Benja, sing kill your guy. I'm like,
Yeah, yeah,
like,
that's fair.
I'm so glad I
That's
time walked
fair.
myself.
That's fair. I will
Uh,
say your earlier build, I'm definitely going to sleep up with the Oswald. I
the
definitely want to
Oswald,
try
yeah,
it. It
yeah,
seems like a lot of fun. But
yeah,
Oswald flipping a sardine can, that's
yeah,
pretty
yeah,
good. That's
yeah. You're
pretty
like, all right, cool. This card was free. Like,
good. Yeah,
if you told me that I could play this card for like 1, we can
yeah,
have real conversations.
for sure.
For 4, like man, paying 4 is that's a lot.
It's
That's a
brutal.
lot, guys. I don't know, and hey, like sometimes you gotta live by Colby and die by Colby. Colby is on average like the real like he's the guy too at the beginning of every set. I'm like, all right, Colby, hit me with it. Like
Hmm.
hit me with it. What do you got? What's cooking? And when he sent over the sardine can list, I'm just like, bro, you really want me? You want me to talk about 2 decks that have sardine can in them? Like like I gotta
Hey.
man, like I gotta sell this card in some way, and it's really difficult because I don't know if I believe in it.
No, everybody, buy your foils now. Get a sardine can metas coming in. We're evolving.
But yeah, if I flip that with Oswald, all
Yeah.
right, I feel okay about that. You know. Oh, so yeah, off meta, in general, right? Like I think it's cool. I think it's one of those like it has to exist in the game. I think in any point in any metagame where it feels like the lack of creativity is a true problem, for your community, for just even event level play, like it can definitely damper. So when you have the opportunity, I tell people all this time, like, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but like those decks that are like so out there, you're just like, hey, listen, dude, if you got to express yourself in League, like you got to go out there and just be like, you know what, I'm gonna do this tonight. Awesome. Like there's nothing on the line. We don't care. Like
Yeah.
it's okay. I think there's I'm so glad that we have League to do that.
Yeah.
But like if you're in a highly competitive room and you're like, oh man, I got it. I got the sauce this week, and then you show up and you play like 3 rounds of like Sapphire Steel items or like Ruby Sapphire. You're like, dude, bro, let me have some fun. Like. So how do you approach those things? Like what? I guess like in the area, like do you have your spots where you're like, oh, like this is it. This is the spot I'm going to bring the spice, and I'm just not going to care. Like is
Yeah.
that like kind of available in your community?
Yeah, it is. I think I'm fortunate. Like we don't have a very large group in my specific little sub area. If you go 25, 30 minutes north, the community is humongous over there. So a lot of times when myself and my friends or my team are testing, it's like the there's so much respect for someone going super spice in a deck. Like so we had a Ruby Steel player a long time ago. Out there trying to explore it, and everybody was just so excited to play it and like encouraging him to continue using it and like try to find ways to make it work just because it's cool to see something different.
Sure.
I think the way that I approach homebrews in general, and I think in my testing in my area is like if it doesn't work the first time, it does not mean it's bad. The
Sure.
game is
Yeah.
full of
At first you
variances.
don't succeed.
Yeah, you just
Pick yourself
you
up
have
and try it again.
like you have to accept that like a lot of these cards are unique and they're not going to work the first time, and it's okay for you to throw it against the wall a few times and get some explore the lines and try these different things, and don't just assume because it didn't work at your first league night that it's trash. Like that, it's
Yeah.
if you have that mindset, you'll never get past just net decking everything, which again, if you're somebody who net decks, that's completely fine. That's a very normal thing.
Right. Right.
But if you're somebody who's trying to like improve on deck building in general, and like if you're spicy brews to just a little uniqueness, you gotta throw it at the wall. You gotta lose a bunch, but you'll probably start winning a bunch after a while, so
Let's let's touch
ideally.
on that. Let's touch on that real quick. So we talk about deck building, right?
Yeah,
Um, I have an answer for like how I would approach, but I'm gonna put you on the spot first. Like
sure.
when someone comes up and they're like, dude, like how do you do this? What type of tip do you give a new player to start out like with deck building?
The way that I typically tell folks is, what are your favorite cards in which ink color, and why in particular is that your favorite card? A lot of times it'll end up being something that's normal, like a Rapunzel, or or a tragic hero or something like that, and then other times you'll get something really off the wall. And I say, okay, well, if you like that card and you want to play that card, let's look at things that support that card and make it fun. Or what is something that has a similar mechanic to the card that you like? And let's see if you can find cards that synergize with it. That's always how I think that's like a great place to start. As like, if you want to play a particular card because of its engine or whatever, or you just think it's awesome in general, what can you do to build around it to like amplify what it does? And
Right.
that's, Mufasa is like there's some diehards. There's Lins, there's me, there's Humble, there's folks that just won't let it go. And I think that was the card that is a good example of that. That's why I liked
The
building
idea
around
that
at the beginning.
you just end it. The reason we want Mufasa is because we can't let it go, and let it go is ironically the best
The
answer to
yeah, the
Mufasa.
answer.
I
Hey, sometimes it's beneficial. Actually, sometimes I need that ink. No.
You're like, yeah, thank you. That's not what I wanted, but it kind of was.
Yeah, I know you helped me. Now I'm dropping Tinkerbell next turn.
Yeah, yeah,
No, but like I think that was the thing that really helped me in deck building in general. Is I was like, oh, I just love this card. How can I make this card better for myself? And
yeah,
that's what I tend to tell folks that are like really trying to improve, because there was a period in time where like I played when it was impossible to find cards. Like you just couldn't
sure.
find anything anywhere. So
Agreed.
I played Emerald, Sapphire, Aggro, and Set 2 because I had to. I didn't have Rapunzel's yet. I couldn't play Steel Song the way I wanted to. So
Yeah,
you got to be, you know, find the cards that you like and try to build around it. Is the
yeah.
way I approach it, at least.
It's funny in like previous games, when asked, I would always be like, yeah, just play limited.
Yeah,
Like in Magic, when you play limited, you still have to build to your lands. Like you can't just
yeah,
be like whatever. The problem with Lorcana is that we have to build. Like in limited, there's no rules, and I actually think that kind of sucks for new players because like if they're first, you know, uh, into the game, they show up to this, like especially in set 8, right? We're about to have these pre-release tournaments where
yeah,
stores are going to these kits and they're going to show up. And there's going to be new players. A lot of times that might be the first time ever playing Disney Lorcana.
yeah,
And the problem with limited in this game is they're like you remove the entire deck construction rule because you say you can play any card, and it's because the packs are smaller. So you just like you don't want to make it like impossible to build a 40 card deck. And obviously, if you build a 30 card deck, that's a whole problem, because
yeah,
there's so many trickling on issues. So what I have started to do is saying like, hey, if you want to get a little bit extra, and you want to like latch on to a like something you already have to do, if at the beginning of every new set you buy a booster box, you know, if you actually sit down and open that booster box and you build a deck with it, like we literally build a deck with the restrictions and rules of Disney Lorcana, you can set out everything and you can look like, okay, like what is the best deck that I can build out of one box?
yeah.
That's what I like tend to do, and I think it's a really good strategy for players
That's
because it
great.
it does put them in a mindset of like, okay, like there are rules, there are restrictions, how much can I get out of one box? Like, can I even get a deck out of this box? And sometimes it's not easy. It's not, and like the other thing is, it might really put you in a position of like, well, that's not the deck I want to build. Well, hey, sometimes we can't build that deck. You just
For
said like,
sure.
I didn't have Rapunzel's. I didn't have all the steel songs that I needed to do. Like, so like since I didn't have those things, I had to make do.
Yep.
I think that is really great and a great new approach for new players. Just say like, all right, I'm going to buy my box, and like even if it's 2 box, I don't care. Like whatever it is, like even if it's just a case, like
Yep.
whatever you're building, when you're done building it, you're like, okay, like what if I only had the restriction of this? What
Yep.
could I build with just this? I think that's like a really good tool because it puts you in that mindset of going like, okay, because I'm building a deck out of this box, I have to look at my curve.
Hmm.
Like where am I weak? Where am I strong? What in combination gives me the best opportunity to be consistent?
Yep.
So yeah, that's like the one thing I really like to try and get across to players, just like how do I actually get like that first level introduction into deck building in the game?
Yeah.
And like, hey man, make the most out of your packs. Like if you get 12 packs, like try and build something with 12 packs.
Yep.
In all honesty. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's another thing too, just for like folks that are newer players, or they're just wanting to know how to expand on that in general. Is like, don't be afraid to take those decks to locals and to talk to your locals. Like,
Yeah.
I can't. We have some folks that are in some of my spots over here that played mono amber.
Sure.
They played mono amber, and they had success in it because they kept going in, and they, every time they would show up with it, they would talk to us and say like, hey, this is just what I have,
Yeah, yeah.
and I want to play this, but how could I make this better with with the cards that I have? And we would all help them. We'd spend time to it, and then then you lose to mono amber, and you don't tell anybody that happened to you. But the thing that's your locals in general, like, more times than not, this game's community is just insane, and I'll
Right.
continue to say it, is like, more times than not, you'll have people that will invest that time into you, as long as you're open to share yourself with them. So
Yeah.
definitely worth doing.
I do agree. I do agree. Mr. Dad Kana, we're over on Instagram. What's our purpose here for Instagram? What are we trying to get across to our channel and our audience?
uh you know I started my Instagram as a way to track myself as a player, just improving. That was the original concept of me
Okay.
going on there. I started my YouTube's barely got anything on there. I started it in the very beginning, when I first started the game. So the channel was created like October 2023.
Okay.
But most of my time is spent on Instagram, just because it's easier for me to engage with folks. I love having conversations. I love sharing deck profiles. I make the occasional memes about whatever's going on, but
Sure.
I tend
Sure.
to share deck profiles a lot, and it's just been the easiest place for me to um, make better connections with the community. And I'm more than happy, if you're not following me, feel free to follow me. Reach out, like, if you want to throw weird deck ideas out, or you want to set up some time to play. Like, I try to do that as much as I can. I'm in most of the community discords and stuff like that. But
Right. Right.
main thing is just tracking my progress of becoming a better competitive player, and just using it to meet the community. So
That's good. That's cool.
yeah.
I like the idea of progress, right? Like sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes it's very difficult to do that, in a world where, we move through things so quickly.
Yeah.
In our game, like we move through sets in 3 months.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to kind of keep up with those things. And I just
Hmm.
posted the link to Instagram and all the spots, but it's also,
For sure.
again, if you're watching afterwards, it's in the description of the YouTube, I promise. Um, and it's one of those where I don't think a lot of players know how to do it.
Yeah.
Like how do you really track progress? So I actually think that's a very interesting way to do it. Because you know what, like, hey, I have a social account, and like this is just where I'm gonna I'll go out there. Now, are you the type of player that does like your tournament reports during
Yep.
events?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the next big event I'm playing is, for those who are in Northern California. If you want to go to
Let's go.
we're finally starting to get some bigger tournaments over here. We have
Love to hear it.
the pretty good tournament is next Saturday. So after the 5th, April 5th, is
Mhm.
is when the next bigger one that's happening is. Usually around 100. Well, the last one was the first one. We had 128 players. We met cap pretty easily.
Okay.
I placed fifth in that one, so I'm
Okay.
hoping to do well. But shout out to them.
You didn't even say them. What am I looking for?
Oh, it's so I think it's labeled as the pretty good tournament, but it's hosted by GSC. and it's based out of Sacramento. So
Okay. All
yeah,
right.
we'll have
All right.
quite a few folks out there. If you, I'm going to post the details on my Instagram as well. But
Perfect.
if you if you can't find it, feel free to reach out. But
Yeah.
um, the Gold Star Collectible is the shop. Sorry, I was trying to remember
Gold
the name.
Star
I always go
Collectible.
by GSC, Gold Star Collectible. Shout out
Yeah,
them.
yeah. It's really
They're
easy to do
awesome.
that when you're like, oh, I know what it is. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah. But yeah, I tend to post tournament results when I'm playing, which is honestly, it's like pretty motivating. You'll if you have a good run or if you have a bad run, you have folks that are just like messaging in the moment and like, hey, just keep it up or whatever
Yeah,
this and
yeah,
that,
yeah.
which is really nice. And then I tend to do like a recap of how it went for me and what I thought was good and what I thought was bad. I've been doing that since my first DLC,
Mhm.
and tracking any tournament I've done since then, and it's
Now, do
been good.
you do that like in just the form of a post,
Yeah,
or like?
in a post,
Okay,
yeah.
I wasn't sure if that was like Instagram Live or something like that, like just where you just had the conversation in the community, etc.
Yeah, I've done. I do Instagram lives, usually going over deck profile after of what I
Okay,
played, and just use it to as an open format to talk about it and answer questions if folks have.
fair enough. Fair enough.
Yep.
I like it. Final tip: someone that wants to homebrew. Any last words about them?
Don't be afraid for people to laugh at what you're playing. It's like if you think that what you're playing is good for a certain reason, then go ahead and believe in that. Test it out. Spend the time with it, and it does not matter if somebody's laughing that you're playing Steel Fossa in set four. You can still be successful. So
Yeah, for
don't
sure.
you do what you believe in, and don't let the meta persuade you away from trying things.
Look for the moment where I'm like, I don't know what Rhino does. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
was
Just
it,
wait for your Daisy to be a 1/8, and then you'll understand.
yeah, yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you. Any shout outs at the end here?
No, shout out to you. I mean, I've been watching Forbidden Mountain since I started. A huge fan. Appreciate everything that you all do for the community, and um, yeah, just thanks to everybody who supports on Instagram and reaches out and has become a friend. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate this community. So, love you all.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
awesome, awesome. Great to
Yeah.
hear it. So again, for anyone that is coming in, final the question of the day, we can kind of end on this. What's your favorite homebrew? We just covered. I don't even know. What was the count here? 10, 11 of them. Like looks like
Yeah, I think
9.
yeah, you had 11, I think. Right?
Yeah. All
Four,
right.
five.
11. Yeah. All right. We covered a bunch. All right. We had a whole bunch of homebrew conversation here. We covered a ton of them. I think they're fun. If you're watching after the fact, I'll do my best. They should all be in the description below when I'm done. I'll go in and I'll make sure I edit this and include the deck list link. I'll make sure I copy over deck conas and things like that as well. So if you are coming in at the end here, though, and you want to let us know what's your homebrew of the day. I'm curious. We've had some good ones. After today, we talked about a couple of these. Or you said the Oswald items list. Do you think you're going to go and sleeve that guy up?
I'm sleeving
You
it
know,
up today. I'm sleeving it up today. I might bring it tomorrow.
leaving it up.
Yeah.
All right. I like it. I missed league last night. I stayed home. Weather sucked. Kids were in a miserable mood. I didn't want to leave
Mm,
the wife home alone with miserable children.
for sure.
So I sat out. But hopefully next week I have some time and we get there and get the league. My leagues are on Monday nights, so that's very exciting. We have been doing community league in the Discord though on Tuesday nights,
Yep.
so we will be back live tonight with some of the community players playing over on Pixelborn Connect. I love it. I'm a big advocate for like I basically only exclusively play paper cards.
Yeah.
I'm not a big digital client person for multiple reasons in some ways, but I just think that if I'm playing the game and it's like with paper cards, like, and I'm playing a tournament, like even if it's over webcams, I just want to
Yeah.
have cards in my hand. I want to get that feel. So like,
Yep.
I really like the idea of like doing the webcam community. I'm really big on community. I want
Yeah.
people to like know who each other are in the Discord. I think it's a really great thing
Yeah.
for them to kind of get involved. And this way, like, listen, guys, I keep saying this out loud, but I'm starting more and more to not believe it. Disney Lorcana challenges are coming back. I hope, fingers crossed. And I want people to be able to like when we go to DLCs, like, hey, oh yeah, you're such and such in the community. Like we met, we played games on Tuesday. Like I really want that to happen
Yeah.
for the TFM community and like people that are talking to each other in Discord are more like they know the voice. I always make jokes about knowing the hands. When we play webcams, like, listen, like I might not know what you look like, but damn it, if I don't see your hands on the table, I know I'm gonna figure it out.
Yeah.
So, but do we have any follows here? When will this stream pop up on you? It's already there. It's already there. It's on YouTube. I promise. It's going to be there. So you can definitely go and check it out. No problems. And then I need to get back to working. But the Mal Staff deck. Ooh, that's a deck that a lot of people talked about. A lot of people got hyped about. And it was never successful. Did you play any Maleficent Staff in your day?
I didn't, but I've played against it quite a bit. We had some folks that were trying their hardest to make it work.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. What are you going to do? But thank you guys so much for being active today. Lots of love over on Twitch, of course. If you're a new follower, thank you. Definitely, again, check out Deadcana in the description of the video below. This will also be on Spotify later. I'll make sure everything's there for everyone to find you. Thank you so much for joining me. You're a West Coast fan. You got up, you took your kids to school, you hopped on, you have a conversation. So I do very much appreciate that. Because West Coast is that life. I'm already in the future. I'm getting ready for lunch. You're like, I don't even know if I had breakfast yet. So.
Yeah, yeah, we'll get there. But no, thank you for having me. It's awesome to have time to hang out and talk about this stuff. I could do it all day. So.